Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Relationship Talks. I am your host, Lorrie Brook, and together we will get to take a look at what goes on behind closed doors. Today, I'm joined by Patty Cuevas.
Hello, my name is Patty Cuevas, and I'm here to talk about interpersonal relationships.
Patty is a life coach helping women rediscover their strengths, gifts, and talents following a turning point in their lives. It is Patty's passion to help women feel heard, validated, and motivated to reach their personal goals following a significant, challenging life event. Patty was born in Guatemala and grew up in Southeast Los Angeles. She holds a bachelor's degree in sociology from Northern Michigan University and a master's degree in psychology with an emphasis in marriage and family therapy from Azusa Pacific University in California. Patty currently lives in Texas with her husband, her children, her mother, and their dog, Happy. From her approach with clients to her marriage and parenthood, Patty states her faith is a strong foundation in all aspects of her life. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Relationship Talks. I'm here with Patty. Thank you so much for joining me today, Patty.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're very, very welcome. I'm so curious. We've been chatting offline for a little while now, and I wanted to get to know or share with our listeners your story. What brings you here to have a chat to me today about relationships?
Actually, my story may sound familiar to some women or many women finding themselves post-breakup, post-long relationship, or a series of relationships, and not really quite finding the one, your prince yet, or the person that you feel is your lobster. I'm here to talk about a little bit about that, what that journey was like for me I found myself in my 20s, mid to late 20s, really entering the dating world as an adult, because before that, my experience had only been a high school sweetheart story. And then fast forward, finding myself in my 20s and not really knowing how to navigate. There's different rules, of course, different unspoken rules, of course. And when I was trying to find myself and trying to see how that intertwined with now my newfound faith as well, and how that meshed together, and just all the different rules, I can say, or the different standards as far as dating, second date, third date, what happens on the first date, what happens on the second date, how long do you wait to call him back, or should I call him back? And just do we meet at Starbucks first, or do we go out for that long dinner date and I'm going to be stuck with someone there for 4 hours and I'm not really the person who's sitting across from me. So it's that journey of how I found something that worked for me, and how I was able to pick up the pieces post getting my heart broken in different ways, and trying to find how to just step forward and put myself out there again, where in a way that I would feel confident and empowered, and just moving forward in life and mixing that in with who I am and being true to myself and being as authentic as I possibly can be. And that is really different from my first experience as a high schooler where, do you want to go out with me? And I come from the generation of no passing. Do you want to go out on a date? Do you want to go with me to homecoming? And here I was 28 years old, and that was no longer an option. So exactly what did that look like for me?
It is. It would be so different going from high school to being in your late 20s and thinking, how do I actually navigate this scene?
It wasn't as seamless. I didn't just wake up one day. There was a lot of trial and error as far as how do I go about this thing called dating. And my first just knee-jerk reaction was just don't date. I was so scared of it. I was so afraid of someone seeing my greenness in dating that I shied away from it for a very long time. I focused on a lot of volunteer work and church work and just really investing in myself first. So that was the route that I took. I did my own personal therapy work. And through that, I rediscovered boundaries and what those look like for me. And did I ever think about boundaries as far as as a 25, 28-year-old woman, what boundaries look like for me? Because like I said, prior to that in high school, you don't really know much about boundaries, and the big ones, but kind of the smaller ones, things that you're not comfortable with, or if you're not ready for something yet, just as being firm on your nose. And now as a 25, 28-year-old or even 30-year-old, what does that look like for me? So a lot of personal work went into that. Thankfully, along the process, I also decided to go back to school and enrolled in a graduate program in psychology. So it was navigating all these things. I've moved out on my own for the very first time when I was 30 something. So it was a bit of a journey. I would say probably 5 to 7 year journey for me.
But it also sounds like during that time you had a lot of your first moments to experience, but with the maturity of being that little bit older.
Yes, there is a lot of advantages that come, a lot of freedoms that come with that. But also too, just kind of, I couldn't help but to feel a little bit trapped in that kind of 15, 16-year-old way of thinking of, oh my gosh, and what does he think of me? And maybe I should ask my friend, and just those things that you kind of practice in high school. There was a lot of going back and forth and then trying to remind myself, okay, you're not 15 anymore. You're not 16. Now you are an adult, and it's okay to just wait, hold on, see how it works, take your time, take a breath, and relax.
What did you learn about the dating scene?
Oh my goodness. I wasn't dating for that long, I should say. There was a lot of contemplating initially. When I decided to finally go out there, I found my tribe. I found a group of friends. We were all felt the same, on the same boat. How does this dating thing work? And one of my friends was from a different country. Another one just felt always a disconnect, kind of felt like the nerdy kid in high school. And now she was actually dating as a mature woman. So we shared those experiences, and I learned to first find my tribe, find my people, and find that support. It doesn't just go to anyone. And it's so important to find those women that will share this journey with you. And we had a little bit of a support group, informal support group, and we read the book together, How to Find a Date Worth Keeping, something like that. My memory serves. It was a long time ago. But we read this book together, and we really challenged every week. Okay, what did you do this week on chapter whatever? So on this chapter, what did they say? What did you do? So we held each other accountable for boundaries, for putting ourselves out there. And throughout that journey, I went speed dating, something I never thought I would have done, I was petrified to do. I went speed dating. I did the Starbucks coffee date, the quick lunch date. And I said, oh, okay. And that's how these practice dates. And I learned to say yes in the way that I learned to say yes to an experience, to an adventure, while still holding my boundaries, but putting myself out there and just willing to take a risk again, because that was something I felt so vulnerable in that area of I'm going to get my heart broken and just overthink the whole process. And I think by finding these group of women, and we went through this journey together, we really found that sisterhood and companionship. And where we went on the speed dating, we had a informal singles holiday party. We didn't call it that, but we just each invited friends of friends that we wouldn't necessarily date, but we thought maybe somebody else in the group would date. And it was a lot of fun. And then finally, it all led up to the point where I said, okay, I'm going to try online dating. And I decided to I had tried it one time, but I was way too afraid. So I said, I'm going to give it a second go. And then finally, that's how I was able to meet my husband.
It would take a lot of courage to be vulnerable like that again, because having been through a relationship, having your heart broken, and then to feel that it's safe enough to put yourself back out there, that took a lot of courage. How much work did that take for you?
It took a lot of work, a lot of looking inside and getting to know me and not reverting back to old ways, taking a look at things such as codependency, looking at boundaries, looking at relationships, looking at if I had a magic wand and tomorrow, what would that look like if I had that? What would that wand do for me if I had the magic question that we tend to ask sometimes? And it took a lot of exploring. It was a lot of hard work, not only emotionally, but also financially for me as well. We're talking about 2008-ish, where there were hard times in the US and there were hard times in California where sometimes I had to say, well, I have my therapy appointment or I could do this. And I really had to make a choice to stick to my program, stick to my personal work and pull through. And I didn't have insurance. I didn't have a steady job. I worked odd jobs, 3 jobs sometimes, and to really make that a priority for myself as if I were to be going to treatment with a medical doctor. I had to commit to that treatment as well.
I want to ask the question, when you made that decision to go online, to go, right, I'm going to do my profile, I'm going to give it another shot. How long was it between making that decision mentally and pressing the submit button on?
Oh my gosh. I probably contemplated for about 3 months. And even a friend of mine, from the first time that I tried it to the second time that I tried it, it was probably a 5-year gap. And I had a friend of mine who would always joke and we'd say, hey, it's free this weekend. It's a free trial this weekend. And and we would make a joke out of it, but we would challenge each other, but neither one of us would take the plunge and actually do it. When I actually did do it, it was something that I didn't share just with anybody. It was with this group of women, and that was it. That was my circle. That was it. And it was something very private because particularly back then, there was just, or maybe now, there's still a taboo of all of these things of online dating sometimes.
How did you, I suppose the next question though for me with online dating, I've never done it, never ever done it. But how do you ensure your safety?
Oh, with the women that I actually went out with, we had our own kind of process. We'd check with each other. What do you think of this person? What do you think of that person? I'd always make sure that no one would come and pick me up at my house. I would meet, in the case, this was my husband. So we met at a certain spot and he was like, why are you being so secretive? Or I said, I am a single woman. Excuse me. I need to make sure that for my safety, I would let my friends know exactly where I was. I got here. This is where we're going. And what you would do as a teen with your parents. But instead, I did it with my girlfriends instead. And they were really good about, hey, just checking in. How's it going? Just say okay or not. That was the first question. My husband and I, we interacted and talked a lot over the phone before we actually met in person. And I did do my own share of Googling and making sure everything lined up correctly. And I can tell him that now, and he laughs about it now, but you're a woman and you have to make sure that, he works this place. Okay, let me just make sure that this company exists, that he is in fact an employee there or certain things like that.
You do. I think it's something that you genuinely have to be curious about because there you are going into an unknown situation with so many unknown variables that you can't control. And you want to make sure that at the end of the night, it is a happy ending, but also that you are safe.
Yes. And I absolutely would meet at a public place, at a mall, at a restaurant. We'd meet at the restaurant. I would not do any nighttime dates unless it was someone who I was really interested in moving forward with, which in this case, my husband was the only one that actually had a nighttime date with. Everything else seemed daytime or on a Saturday early. So I wouldn't put myself in these positions where it was awkward or I didn't feel comfortable. And I would always state that ahead of time. This is why the boundaries work was so important for me, because these weren't factors that you met someone at school, in high school, you see them at school, someone you had to have known them, friend of a friend. So you have that reference. But when it's online dating, you do not have a reference, then your boundaries become very important in your gut and also too in your conversations. If it was someone who was like, making a comment about my physical appearance, that just wasn't someone who I was going to respond to. At the time, it was in this particular company, you interact in levels. So first you'd email each other, answer questions, he answers questions, I answer questions. And then if you want to step forward, then you can have an online conversation. If you want to move it forward, then you can provide your personal phone number, if that's what you felt like. And then the last step was actually to meet. So it went in levels. It wasn't just, I met someone, let's meet up tomorrow. It wasn't like, that's not the way, at least this program was designed, which it made me feel really comfortable. The paying programs are also important because you know that it's someone who's serious in dating and going back to dating. I never did any of the free stuff because it would really filter out a lot of people who were not there for a good purpose, or at least not the purpose that I was there for.
So let's talk about then, you met your husband on one of these dates, and how long have you been together now?
We will be celebrating our 10-year anniversary next year. Wedding anniversary.
That's awesome. So tell me, how did that go? What was it like going from being single back into a relationship then?
I think initially I was expecting, one of my hesitations about dating was that it was going to take a long time. And I'm saying, okay, I'm 30 something. There's certain things I need to get done really quickly. And some of those deadlines are important, but some of them you just learn to, now thinking back, I should just throw them out the window. There is no deadline. There is no the way it should be. So we dated when he asked me to be his girlfriend, and we took the relationship a little bit more serious. I let him know ahead of time, if you're thinking one of these, she's going to be my girlfriend long term, that's not what I'm looking for. So I just want you to really think about what you're asking me, because I'm not looking to be a long-term girlfriend. And that took a lot for me to say, because the old Patty would not have said that at all, would have just smiled and went with the flow and was just happy to have someone in her life. So I think,
I can say the courage that you get from stepping out and doing that personal development work at the start really pays off when you can say, hang on, no, this is what I want.
Yes. And I think that comes with that personal work and maturity. And also and there's some, I don't know, for me, there was just something about my 30s where I just finally felt comfortable in my skin, who I was. I did the personal work. I just felt so much in my skin, right? As soon as I stepped into my 30s, along with my personal work. And I think that's what gave me the confidence and confidence in my faith and who I was. And I said, this is exactly who I'm looking for. And if you're it, great. But if you're not, kindly step aside, because that's just not what I'm looking for. And my husband was right on the same wavelength as me. So we were just in sync in that way. And he was looking at me like, of course, I wouldn't have done this if I didn't. I said, okay, I'm just letting you know, because not everybody thinks like you and I. And so that's the way that piece went, is that I always made sure these are my boundaries and I'm sticking to them. So I'm letting ahead of time, this is what they are. And I think my husband, it was refreshing for him that I wasn't just, let's just go with the flow and see how this goes.
And what about once you then started that relationship? How was it going from being single and doing everything for yourself to coming into a relationship where there is somebody else that you have to consider, and the merging of the two worlds?
That was another adjustment, I think. And initially, I have to admit, it was a little rough initially, just because our process went so fast. We're like, yes, I love you. You love me. Let's get married. And 9 months later, we were married. So we were actually dating as we were preparing for marriage. And it felt it was the right time for us. And in our faith, we felt that it was an answered call. So we said, we're stepping out on faith. But that first year can be a little bit, and I've heard marriage be described as a dance. And then over the years, you just get each other's rhythm. And in the first couple of years, you're like stepping on each other's toes and bumping into each other. So we did a lot of work together as far as, this is what I am like. I am an introvert. He's also an introvert. Well, more of an ambivert. And he's more of an introvert. So finding that balance of, these are the things that I prefer to do. This is how I recenter, get my energy again. And this is what drains me. And I think finding that, and there's only one way you find that out, is to go through that journey together. Oops, okay, that wasn't the right thing to do. Or as far as communication, and it's something that you go through different stages in marriage. And when kids come into the picture, then you have to there's another element that you have to adjust to. And even in your communication. Yeah. In the beginning, we had the freedom to use whatever language we would choose. And now with kids, we just have to censor ourselves and take it back, or volumes of our voice before it could elevate. And now with kids, you have to remain cool. And I think finding out exactly, what was it about me taking, I don't know, the wrong pen? What was it that triggered you? What does that mean for you? And I appreciate my things neat, and I prefer it if you put things back where they belong. And I would be like, I'm your wife. I could take whatever I want. No, but these are my things. And so he, as you can probably guess, he's way much more organized than I am. Learning to close the drawers back, and because this is what you want to do for your partner. Not things that you want to do these are the things that you should be doing for me, but I should want to do these things for you because I want this to work. We love each other, but these are little things that may annoy each other. And we went through the seven love languages together. So finding out, okay, this is my love language. This is your love language, but with the whole point of, well, I want to do things that speak to your love language, not this is my love language, so you have to do these things that speak to me. No, it's the key, and the struggle in that is finding what your partner prefers and what speaks to his language, and for him to make that same effort back.
Yeah.
So that
It
helped
is
us.
very much about changing that mindset as opposed to thinking that they should want to do it for you, putting the onus on you and going, no, I want to do it.
Yes. And I think that's the whole point of, I forget his first name, but Gottman. Gottman covers a lot of that. Any book by Gottman, I try to read notes, read something about Gottman because he's all about relationships. Gottman's all about relationships and about having this kind of bank, a love bank where you deposit, everyone deposits, but when you take out or when you take it, those negative things that happen, they're going to cost you twice as much. So that means you have to constantly be depositing more than taking out because when we have those frictions, it's really debiting your love account twice as much than what you're depositing in, if that makes sense.
Yeah, very much. So tell me about your work now. What is it that you're actually, or how are you helping women navigate this journey?
I am actually a life coach. I help specifically women who have experienced a unplanned event in their lives and are ready to take the reins back. That they have done the grief work, they have worked through that, and now they want to go back to their goals, their careers, or just finding themselves again and what energizes them, and to help them get back on that horse. Whether it's dating or whether it's going back to school or whether it's traveling again, whatever it is that may look like for her.
But very important, I think what you said there was they had to have done that work first. Like you don't go through that event and then just think, right, next adventure. You need to do the work.
I always recommend that as well. I'm not a therapist, but I have been on the other side of that couch and I've seen what the benefit of what that is. So once you've done that work, then you say, okay, what are my goals now? Is it to have 5 dates in a month? Is it to try one date? Or is it just to sign up and open up a profile? Whatever it is that may look like for her, that's where I like to come in and come alongside and say, yes, you're doing it. And let's see how we can, what strategies we can work to get you to that goal that you either left behind or a new goal that you may want to rediscover.
And how much, I suppose, the joy in seeing people's confidence come through in achieving these goals. What does that mean for you?
Oh gosh, it means so much. It means so much because when I see somebody saying, if this would have been me a year ago, I see myself in a way. I see myself and I say yes, because I so identify with that feeling of, look, I felt left behind in life. I felt stuck. I felt paralyzed by grief and loss, feeling abandoned, and all of those different elements. But now look, I'm taking the reins back and this is what I'm doing. I remember receiving the letter of admission to grad school. I had tried grad school 3 different times, and tried and failed. And then that third time I knew it was it, which was for a marriage and family grad school program. And I just remember just Rocky, when Rocky when he's at the top of those steps and the battle's not over, but there's just this moment in if you're familiar with the movie where he's on top of the steps and nothing's going to stop him from that point forward. It's almost like he already won it. He just needed to make it official and win that last match.
That is awesome. So I have one final question for you, Patty. What do you think the secret to a happy, healthy relationship is?
I don't think there's just one. I don't think that they should be secrets. I think that you work for what's for you and your partner. If you're in a committed relationship, commitment, high up there, that's crucial. If you're both committed, that is, and it's because sometimes people have different ideas of what commitment is. And I think those conversations early on are very important because you're setting the limits. You're saying, okay, what are the parameters for this relationship? So that's just your basic mold. If you're baking a cake, that's your basic mold. What's this going to look like? Is it going to be round or is it going to be squared? These are the parameters. So I think that talking about boundaries, how you receive love and perceive love. If you plan to have children, what happens if you don't have children for whatever reason? What are your spending habits like? And I don't think those are any very intrusive questions to ask if you're looking forward to a long commitment, and it's a constant because finances are never going to go away. Once you get married, It's all about the finances. So you better get a good idea about what your partner's spending habits are and also be willing to share and be a participant of yours. One before we got married, my husband and I sat down and he said, okay, here's my bank statement. Let's see yours. I was really happy to see his and mine. I was, oh God, it's like someone looking through like your drawers or your dirty clothes. You don't want anybody to see that. So let's have a conversation about that. You spent this so be willing if you can have that relationship and it's not an easy one and it may be tense and it may cause friction, but as long as you're both willing to put in the work, it's very important and it may not look the same way. So what are your expectations? To me, and being able to communicate with your partner, this is me putting in the work, just so you know this and this. And then for him to communicate the same thing back, because I may not perceive what he's putting in as the same as what I'm putting in, but being open to having those conversations and the reasons why, then you say, oh, wow, yeah, that is much of an effort for him. He really didn't want to go to that party with me. He'd much rather stay home, but he did it because he wanted to be with me. And I'm thinking, what's wrong with having fun? Everybody likes parties. Not necessarily. Yeah. So it's having that open communication and be willing to be as much of a speaker as a listener. And grace. I think just having grace with parameters. We don't want any women to be in an abusive situation. But I'm thinking having grace for your partner, and he's new at this just as much as you. And speaking of parenthood, I'm just much of a new mom as he is of a new dad. And we go through different stages of our children growing up together. And I won't always have it right. He won't always have it right. And I think the ability to discuss and repair. Yes, we can probably have friction about certain things at certain stages in our relationship. But how's your repair? Are you going to hold on to things for months to come? Or are you going to just take a deep breath and say, you know what? I know you meant well. Let's just next time X, Y, and Z happens. What are we going to do so that just because you argue, it doesn't mean it's the end. And again, within parameters, but being able to work at it, and both have to be active participants. I cannot do all the work for my husband or my boyfriend or my partner, and he cannot do all the work for me. We have to constantly be putting in that piggy bank and just taking into account the fact that piggy bank can run low sometimes. So let's check our piggy bank. How are we doing? Yeah, how's it going? And just constantly reevaluating. It's constant work. It really is. It's constant work.
There were some real gold nuggets in that. So thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you for coming on the show. It's been lovely chatting to you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
You're very welcome.
And thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Relationship Talks. If you can, I would love for you to jump on and leave a review. And whilst you are at it, don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please join me again next week when we get to take a look behind closed doors at someone else's relationship. But until then, I am your host, Lorrie Brook, and remember, the choice is yours, so make today and the week the very best it can be.